Hello, everyone. Good evening. We would like to officially welcome you to a special Homecoming Week edition of From Postcards to Hashtags. This is an exciting partnership at Eastern Kentucky University between EKU Libraries, EKU Alumni, and also EKU Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm Christy Middleton, the Chief External Affairs Officer here at EKU, and I am honored to serve as one of the co-moderators here this evening as we have a treat in store. Our panelists, who you will meet shortly, have already been chatting in our virtual green room. And let me tell you, the stories we're going to hear over the next hour or so are definitely worth tuning in for. My co-moderator here to help guide us through this discussion is one of our newest team members here at Eastern Kentucky University. And I'll turn things over to Dr. Danny Moore to tell you a little bit more about himself.
Hi, my name is Danny Moore, and I am excited to share the moderation task with Christy. We had a chance to engage with the panelists a few minutes ago, and you are in for a treat. And so, as Christy mentioned, I've only been here for a few months, but I've had an opportunity to really meet a lot of people on campus and meet a lot of alums. So I am excited to serve as the newly hired Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and really work to make sure we are embedding diversity and inclusion in all that we do on campus. And part of that is really making sure we have opportunities to engage with our alums. So tonight you are in for a treat, and we're gonna get this party started.
Wonderful. So we would like to introduce individually each of our panelists. We're just going to give a brief introduction of them and then let them tell you a little bit more about themselves and their EKU experience. We start with one of our soon-to-be alums that is going to join us with a perspective on the current climate on the EKU campus and our society. We are so proud to have with us our current SGA president, Iwobio Mcconan. He is the first international student body president of EKU in our history, and the first Black student body president in about 40 years. He's an English and political science major, and an anticipated graduation date, if we can not keep him too busy with things like this. He is in demand right now on campus, but he is set to graduate this spring in May of 2021. Iwobio, thank you so much for being with us. If you don't mind to just share a little bit about what brought you to EKU and anything you'd like our audience to know tonight.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor. Hello, everyone. My name is Iwobio Mcconan. I am a senior English and political science major. I'm originally from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I was born and raised there. And I moved to Clay County, Kentucky when I was about 15 to live in a boarding school along with a bunch of other 15-year-old teenage kids. So that was a lot of fun. I have been involved in student government since my freshman year. I began my career in SGA as a freshman senator. I was walking past tabling, and what caught my eye was they had a picture of this guy in a robe, and it was just very interesting. So I stopped to look at it, and the student body president just came up to me. He was like, "Hey, you should run for student senate." And I did. And now I have the honor and the pleasure of serving as EKU's student body president. And that is all I have.
Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. We look forward to hearing more of your perspective on things this evening.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to introduce Ms. Tia Jones, a 2004 graduate. She's a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, a world traveler, and currently a property developer and co-owner and operator of Love and Arms LLC in Memphis, Tennessee.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be on tonight. As she said, my name is Tia Stokes. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I currently live in Memphis, Tennessee. I graduated from Eastern in 2004. My major was criminal justice, corrections and juvenile justice. While I was there, I was president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Untitled Chapter. Still active and financial to this day with Shelby County Alumni Chapter in Memphis, Tennessee. Love my experience at Eastern. The co-owner of Loving Arms. It's a home care agency for the elderly and people with disabilities. I also currently sit on the Tennessee Association of Home Care board here, and also with Blue Care United Healthcare and AmeriGroup. I sit on those boards as well.
Welcome. We are glad to have you. Our next panelist, also someone who has not been too far away from EKU's campus. We did let him get away and go to another higher ed institution. Mr. Devin Muff is joining us as part of our esteemed panel. Now, he is the winningest player in EKU basketball history, and also the current Associate Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education. So a colonel, certainly in many ways, and used to work with several of the folks that are part of organizing this event. Good to see you again, Devin. What would you like to share with the group?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me on today. I'm a graduate of Eastern Kentucky from 2014, 2015, and soon to finish my doctorate this semester. In educational leadership from Eastern Kentucky again, so I'll be a 3-time Lieutenant Colonel. I'm originally from the Cleveland, Ohio area. I now live in Lexington, Kentucky, and I serve at the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and just happy to be here and just happy to be back with other colonels.
I think we might have lost Dr. Moore's connection there. So I will jump in and introduce our next panelist while we hopefully can get him joining us again. Dr. Elaine Ferris is a several-time graduate of EKU. We'll let her tell you a little more about the degrees that she has earned, but she's a member of 3 classes of EKU, so we like to see that, and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and EKU's 1975 Miss Ebony. That's something we'll have to talk about. I don't know if we have that anymore. She's celebrated as a 32-year career veteran as a public educator in Kentucky, including being the state's first African-American woman to serve as a superintendent. Welcome, Dr. Ferris.
Hello, Colonel fans and Colonel family. I'm excited to have an opportunity to be here tonight, and thank you to Steve Greenwell, who always reaches out to me, and love my alum. I try to stay as active as I can with the Colonel family. I am from Winchester, Kentucky, about 25 miles from Richmond, and several of my friends went to EKU, and that's kind of where my interest in EKU became, the seed was planted. So I ended up there. And as said earlier, I graduated from EKU in 77 with my BS, and then went back and got my master's in 81 and a doctorate in 2012, same program that you are in, Devin. And I would like to say that when we were trying to approve the program at EKU and Moorhead, and I think Northern, that I actually was at KDE at the time and was on the panel that approved EKU's doctoral program. So, and I happened to graduate from it. So I'm excited about that experience that I had. Loved EKU when I was there. I am a proud member of AKA. At this time, I serve as the chairperson of the Kentucky State University's Board of Regents, which has given me a different perspective, been in an HBCU in Kentucky, and it's been just an awesome experience. I also, when I retired in 2013, I started a consulting firm called 4.0 Education Consulting and Advocacy Services. And I work with Fayette County Public Schools as a leadership coach, and I work with 6 of their first-year principals. So I still keep my hands in public education and thoroughly enjoying my work with these young aspiring administrators.
And I'm going to introduce Dr. Eric Abercrombie, a 1970 graduate of EKU, a proud member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and founder member of EKU's ensemble. He's a legacy is in student advocacy throughout his career. Currently is the assistant varsity basketball coach at Woodard Central Technical High School in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'm going to say he is a legend in the Cincinnati area. I spent quite a few years in that area, and no one in that community really, we all know him. I mean, he is truly a leader.
Well, thank you very much. You just let everybody know I'm old. I really appreciate the opportunity really to speak tonight. I'll be honest, I heard someone say that they love EKU. I didn't. I love fellow Black students, and I'll be honest, 2 white people when I was there at Eastern Kentucky, and I'll deal with that later. One of the first things I want to say is when I speak tonight, I'm not speaking for all Black students. I can only speak from my own experience, and I think that my experience will present where those students were. I grew up in a little small country town called Falmouth, Kentucky. And that's where the conditioning started in terms of me really being challenged with the issue of white supremacy, and also being the first and only one, but most of all, knowing that education was a way out. So I end up going from Falmouth to Covington, Kentucky. I graduated from Covington Holmes High School in 1966, and ended up coming the summer of '66 is interesting. Little country guy, a funeral director, brought me to the campus, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Physically, I mean, I came when nobody was there. So I ended up being there because the year of 1966, the state of Kentucky ended up having what was called 100 Black students. And the goal was for all of the state institutions, because they were pretty much segregated and had very few Black students other than athletes. The goal was to increase the numbers of Black students who are on predominantly white campuses in the state of Kentucky. I stayed there. We'll talk a little bit later about my experiences. I am so glad that I graduated not with 1 degree, but 2 degrees. And part of my story later on will be how out of something bad comes something good. Some of my most negative experiences on a college campus happened at Eastern Kentucky University. And there was a point where I didn't even come back to the campus, but I've reemerged. I've got a new energy. I got a new attitude thanks to really kind of looking back and really looking at the successes of the campus, and most of all, just dealing with the people who've reached out to me. So that's my first journey related to being at Eastern Kentucky University.
Well, thank you so much for your perspective, and to all of our panelists for sharing their time with us this evening, and especially all of you for tuning in. I think Dr. Abercrombie started off with a great segue to our first question. He shared a little bit about his experience at EKU, and so we're going to open it up, and this will be just a casual conversation with our panelists answering as they feel moved to do so. But our first question is for each of you to just share a little bit about what the Black experience has been like or was like for you as a student at EKU.
Okay.
Identify.
May I make the first incision, if I might, since we're going to do it this way, because I heard two things that really, Brother Ewell, you know, one thing that happens on predominantly Black campuses and universities, I want to make the point that in 1968, I think that's the year, Brother Robert Warfield was a vice president of student government, which was an accomplishment no one would ever thought at that time. I think I heard you say it's been 40 years since there's another Black president. But I want to say this. When I came to Eastern Kentucky, I was afraid. I was apprehensive. I mean, I'd already been conditioned. I've been conditioned for 18 years of being taught to stay in my place because of the color of my skin. I've been conditioned 18 years with dealing with people calling me names, etc. So it's interesting. I talked with one of my frat brothers this morning and reminiscing, and he said, when I got off the bus, and for some folk, y'all get off with TVs, y'all come off with all kind of luggage. Guess what, Sister Tia? When we came to the campus, everybody will remember we had a trunk. College students had a trunk. And you put all your stuff in that little trunk. And when you showed up on campus, that's all you had. And so when I got there, it's interesting. What I was introduced to was more segregation, more cultural and racial oppression. But the one thing that was helpful was the fact that I saw people who looked like me. And in coming to campus as a first generation, none of the people, like many people there with me, had a college experience. But we knew this. We knew we had to be successful. So when I look back and I think about my total experience related to when I first got there, I'll be honest, Elaine, Dr. Ferris, I'm still scarred. That's why for a long time, I never went back. I never went back to EKU because I was so scarred from my experience, even though I had some really good experiences. So tonight, what I'll share through conversation is the good, the bad, and the ugly of having been at Eastern Kentucky University.
And I guess my experience was totally different. You know, I arrived at EKU in 1973. I had gone through a segregated school system until I was in the 8th grade in Winchester, which was only 25 minutes from Richmond, Kentucky. My major was education, and actually it was physical education. I had a sister who was a PE teacher, and I wanted to be a PE teacher. And I have to say that the College of Education just kind of took me under their wings. I remember Dr. Martha Mullins so vividly, how kind she was to me, how she mentored me. I remember Dr. Richard Gentry, how he mentored and took me under his wing. And so my experience, I never had any African-American professors. But I will say that the professors in the College of Education, even through my master's program, my advisors, they were just so kind. They were very encouraging, opened many doors, gave me many different experiences, made sure I had everything I needed to be successful. And so my experience was totally different, especially academically. You know, of course, I joined a sorority, and that was great. But even outside of that, I enjoyed my time at EKU.
Yeah, I was glad to hear that, because you got to understand, when I came, the same people that I had graduated with a few months before, Dr. Ferris, I couldn't even room with them. Guess what they did? They segregated us into rooms. The original, most predominantly white campuses, the first people are the athletes. They make the incisions. So thank God that they were able to be there to open the doors. You had a few other students like Lois Chambers, like Claudia Williams. So we, I'm glad to hear what you got like when you came, because when we came, guess what? You couldn't go downtown. You couldn't go to the movie. Even on being on the campus, the reality of the segregation, we had to experience Kappa Alpha coming on campus doing Confederate parties. We had to experience, I had never seen a Confederate flag live, but at the football and basketball games,
Wow.
they were flown over top of us. And so, and it's interesting because it's interesting that I'm glad to hear you became Miss Ebony, because guess what? If you go look in the 68, 69 yearbook, they had all white females and talked about how they were the standard of beauty. So I'll be honest, the teachers were not ready for us. We had no black faces. We had no Upward Bound. We had nobody other than, and I agree with you, the white professors and administrators who would reach out to us. And I'll end with this. I'm sorry, but you kind of stirred my melanin up with what you said. If it hadn't been for Dr. Herb Vesio, a whole lot of black students from the time he was there would never graduated. He was a financial aid director. So that's how my experience, and again, I'm not speaking for other black students, but my experience related to what we had to endure. Get this, when Dr. King was assassinated, we were asked to come assemble in Brock Auditorium thinking they were going to apologize to us for what was going on. And they wanted to make sure we weren't going to burn the place down. And that's where a whole lot of things took off. I'll be honest. It was out of that how I got my professional opportunity to move on and how the choir got its opportunity. So I just wanted to share that. That may not be everybody's experience, but it was rough, Brother Moore. It was when we first came to that campus, the way we were segregated, the way we were looked at, the way those teachers treated us by telling us we didn't even need to be in the classroom. No, that experience, that history of EKU is real. It's not everybody.
Wow.
It's not everybody. And if it were not for the allies, Dr. Ferris, I'll be honest, I wouldn't sit here today.
And what year was that you were there?
I was there.
70?
I came in there in 1966 and left in 71.
That makes a difference.
And a big difference because, we're kind of arrogant. We like to say we paved the way. We like to say, if you deal with the things that happened, black organizations created then, the university ensemble, which had a wonderful influence. If you go back and look, a lot of the increase in enrollment, black enrollment, happened because of the choir, because we would take 2 busloads of choir members into different places because nobody knew how many black students were at Eastern. Nobody thought any black students were at Eastern other than athletes. So that's kind of what happens. So I'm sorry, but you stirred my melanin up a little bit.
I like that phrase, Dr. Abercrombie. I'm going to use that.
Okay.
Well, we will fast forward to our next generation of students, and Ms. Stokes, tell us about your experience. We'll go in chronological order since we've taken this historical path. So EUL will get to wrap things up. But Tia, tell us about what EKU was like when you came to campus.
The Black experience for me at EKU and even my perception of what I expected was a little bit different. Like I said, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, which is, I consider evenly diverse, how I view it. I went to Brown School, which was evenly mixed Black and white. I really never experienced any racism at all. And my first experience of racism was at Eastern. So my first experience was I was an RA, and the night monitor, I had just finished my rounds, and the night monitor had just received my paperwork, and I was walking back down the hallway, and a young lady had came up to the counter and asked her a question. And she said, well, ask her. And she said, ask the little colored girl. And I heard that and I just stopped in my tracks. Because I graduated from high school in 99, by the way. So this is my first year there. And I heard it and I was like, what did she just say? So I turned around and I went back to the desk and I said nicely to her, said, I'm not little, I'm not colored, I'm not a girl. I said, my name is Tia. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. And she's like, well, honey, I didn't mean anything by it. And I said, I understand, but I just want you to know that my name is Tia. And I don't think she was trying to be rude, or I think she just honestly didn't know. But I felt like that was my time to make sure she did know, because it made me feel a way that I've never felt before, because I've never been called anything like that. I like I said, I don't think she meant it disrespectfully, but I know I've never felt that rise up in me when I heard those words. But my overall experience at Eastern, it was okay. It was, us congregating in Todd and Dupree Hall that's not there anymore. Eating in Square, joining my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, Untitled Chapter, us getting together, doing things to other schools. So, overall, my experience at Eastern was a good one.
So I think next up, Devon, I know there's been some talk about the athletic experience and athletes. I don't know if you want to touch on some of that or whatever stands out to you about your time when you came to EKU.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I came in and I kind of had like a family already built in with me with my teammates. And so sort of the things to look out for, to like watch, like Dr. Abercrombie, you mentioned some of the other fraternities on campus that had like racist things going on in what they were doing. My teammates warned me, hey, don't go around it. Now, when I'm going to use the old saying that my grandparents say, like, when I didn't believe the water was wet, real quick. And so, and I mean, that's just how it was. So like, brothers to me, and then so they kind of guided me through the experience. So like, of course there was jerks everywhere, and I'm from Cleveland, so I'm when we saw a Confederate flag, we just kind of just assumed that this person is they're bad. Down to Kentucky, it was almost a way of life. I mean, for the first time I saw people dressing up in Confederate uniforms, and this is in 2012, and you're like, what's going on? And then you see Confederate flags, and people saying, well, it's just part of their heritage. And like where I'm from, that's not part of my heritage. That needs to go real quick. I think all of us have like these moments that kind of like stick out. The one moment that happened to me when I was playing basketball, my face was on a billboard at the time, but I was at a party at a friend's house, and there was a case of domestic violence that was going on that I had saw, and I couldn't get to the scene like right away. So I tried to get an officer that I saw that was right across the street. I go over, I scream, officer, I need your help. The officer points a gun at me. This is in Richmond, Kentucky. This is right off campus, and he says, take one more step and I'll blow your head off. And I just put my hands up. I said, hey, look, there's somebody in an apartment at whatever the apartment number was right now. They need your help right now. He says, yeah, that's fine. You just walk away real slow. And I say all that to say, just because I was wearing a basketball uniform didn't make me any special. Like in that moment, he didn't care. I could have just been a hashtag like anybody else. So like that was my flashbulb moment that sticks with me, and it's really difficult. And like you said, Dr. Abercrombie, that's like a painful moment when I had to think about. But overall, like I have lots of great mentors, lots of great experiences, but there are those moments every once in a while that you just think. I mean, and my teammates, and I mean, we're still in a group text message to this day, and we still talk about some of those experiences that stick out, that make you feel like you were less than. Like, what was that moment for you at Eastern Kentucky? And it's kind of sad that we all have a story that made us feel like we were less than. And we try to ignore it and try to just talk about basketball. And that was the good times, So that was experience. Like I said, overall, I had a great experience. I have lots of great mentors. I still communicate with a bunch of people on campus, and they've been great to me. In the city, the city of Richmond loved my time when I was there. but there are those moments that do stick out.
And I would like to interject, during my time too, we had 2 African-American cheerleaders. I don't know if that ever happened at EKU. We had the first African-American homecoming queen. So we had a lot of things happen that were very positive for the African-American students at EKU. And I don't know, Dr. Abercrombie, it may be that you all paved the way. Maybe you all had to have the pain so we could have the pleasure. But
Yeah.
you know, that's how it works. You know,
That's how it
somebody has
works.
to open the door for the rest of us to walk in. And maybe because it was so hard and tough and the suffering happened during your time, that it made it easier for our time. But so, you know, I have those things that those to me were those were real important things for the African American student body at that time to say, you know. And of course, we had our areas that we had our places where we would sit at basketball games where all the Black kids would sit. We had our places at the football game where all the Black students would sit, you know, just like in public schools. And why do all the Black kids sit at that table at the cafeteria? It happened at EKU. So I can't say we was integrated. We were segregated in our own places because of the familiarity. But we did have those 2 things that we were very, very proud of. And we still talk about those things today as our Black homecoming queen, our Black cheerleaders. So, you know, maybe you all had to pave the way for all that to happen.
Yeah, and I would add on to say this too, because when I was in school, Obama was president, and so kind of foolishly
There you go.
that, hey, like things have changed. You know, we're making steps. You know, things are bad, but we're still taking steps forward. But then again, while I was in school, Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin also happened, and so and those moments can also happen. So you get reminded real quick that, like, yeah, we've made progress, but we still got a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my experience while I was on campus.
And as we talk about progress, I know we've waited anxiously and to hear the path forward coming all the way from Dr. Abercrombie's experience to you, EUL, and seeing the linkage of he remembering the first student body president of color, and now here you are in your position 40 something years later. What are your thoughts on your experience, and especially hearing of the students who've come before you?
With the first Black student body president, I have my thoughts structured, but I'm just gonna abandon that because I really want to hone in. I decided to run for student body president my freshman year, and that was the night of the Senate election. I came into the student government office to turn in my election receipts, and the office was the dingiest, most not discriminating in the way that it was very what's that word that I'm looking for? It was intimidating is the right word for it. And I walked into the office, turned in my receipts, and this was about 3 p.m. Polls didn't close until 5 or 6. And I walked out and I had given up completely. I said, there is no place for me there. And then that night, I came back and I saw my name posted, and I had gotten the last seat for freshman senator, and I had beaten the person right underneath me by 4 votes. And that night, I remember getting my SGA binder, which had the Constitution, the bylaws. I sat outside of Powell. I was flipping through, and that's the night when I decided I'm going to make sure that I run and win the student body president position, so that I can take it into my hands to make sure that no other student ever feels how I felt that night. And I gave up on that dream too, until I learned about Robert Warfield. And I saw that someone before me had done it before. And, you know, with that being said, just going back to Devin, how you were talking about, it didn't matter that you were a basketball player. At that moment, you could have been a hashtag. And it's the experience of what everyone has said. I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't here. It's a more hidden, more subliminal thing, but it's still here. After this was, I think, a week into our administration, Um, I jaywalked, and I saw a police officer riding by, and I was like, I was doing something illegal, and if I got stopped and something had gone wrong, there is no title, no amount of money, nothing that could protect me in that moment. There's nothing that I could have done that would have guaranteed my safety. And the only precursor to me being unsafe or feeling unsafe was the color of my skin. I'd be lying if I said that, all the experiences that everyone experienced is absolutely gone. Just yesterday, someone in a truck that had a Confederate flag posted it's a little decal, gave us a Nazi salute. And it's still here. But I will say my experience has been, I've developed into who I am as a Black man at EKU. Kendrick taught me that we would be all right. Miss Lauren Hill taught me the Black woman perspective that I didn't know of, because I am from a different country and I've been around African culture, but I haven't been around Black culture. But my highlight of my experience, I will say, is the friendships that I've been able to form here. And I will say most of whom are with my white peers. I've been able to have conversations with them where I've structured my experience like a research paper, where I've given them a hook to introduce them, given them a thesis statement, 3-point paragraphs, each with a topic sentence. And that's what college does. I've been able to have those experiences. But if we don't acknowledge everything, it's those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And if we don't acknowledge our history as an institution, both the good and the bad, we will repeat the bad and we will most certainly forget the good.
I wanted to say to you all, maybe I need to apologize because I got a note slipped to me that I was a little loud. But when I talk about Eastern and think about it, it just, like I say, there's so many things that come to mind, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I do want to say, I want to tell you the good things I liked. I did like coming to a new environment away from home and meeting new people and knowing what this thing, I'd always worked hard to get to college. I worked hard in high school. In fact, I was very arrogant about what kind of student I thought I was. And then I look up and I'm on academic probation after my first year. So I almost didn't get back. If it had not been for the sensitivity of somebody at Eastern, and I think it's because they really made an all-out attempt to try to keep Black students there. And because Herb Vesio could get us money. I like that. I like that for only 2 years of my life, Dr. Ferris, had I experienced an indoor toilet. So I like, many of us who came from what we call the country, we didn't have running water inside the house growing up. We had hand-me-down clothes. We had food that was given to us from other places. So all of a sudden, to have exposure, the first time I had pizza was in college. And the reason I never ate it was because it's interesting growing up, the different prejudices you grow up with, because people said it was white folks' food. And so it's interesting. It was when I got to college through association with other students. That's how I was able to deal with that. Let me share with you to kind of say why I get emotional and why I'm kind of scarred and take you back to the day that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It was like yesterday. Before that happened, I lived in Commonwealth Hall. And I had a white male tell me, because my mother could only send me $10 a week, that I shouldn't even be in college. I shouldn't even be in college. And so since I wasn't doing well academically, I didn't have money. The reality of this doubt being put in my mind, and I couldn't really do anything about it because we were outnumbered. Wasn't that many of us in the residence halls to go through changes? But the night Dr. King was assassinated, the campus, they cheered. You could hear it out the windows. They applauded his assassination. So when people wonder, why are you scarred? Why do you feel the way you do? So if it had not been for the fact that after being brought to Brock Auditorium, Dr. Burge went to the president, and because the President Martin had blown it. Rather than ask, how are y'all doing, to approach us with, y'all better not even think about creating any trouble. He ended up, Dr. Burge goes, President Martin says, what can I do? I walked out of the meeting. Out of something bad comes something good. I walk out of the meeting because I'm not going to be insulted. One thing with growing up around white folks, even though I grew up around in an environment of systematic oppression, I was not afraid. I wasn't afraid of white folks. So the president calls me and he said, why you walk out on me? I said, because you insulted us. It's interesting. Long story short, I end up saying, why would you put me in a room and segregate me to da-da-da-da-da? And out of that, guess what? He ends up saying, I'm going to make you the first Black administrator at Eastern. So I end up, no way I should have gotten into graduate school. None. Zero. But out of our experiences, I want to say, you're right, Dr. Ferris. We find people, that campus was not ready. Those administrators were not ready. The teachers were not ready. The students were not ready. A campus of unreadiness. So, but out of that experience related to the Dr. King experience, that's really, in my opinion, what helped to begin to change somewhat the life of Black students at Eastern, because now they gave us 2 buses where the choir could go anywhere around the state of Kentucky. And we could go to some parts of Indiana and Ohio. So that was kind of the first breakthrough, in my opinion, of students other than athletes related to that environment, and the campus seeing us as an asset. See, at HBCUs, like Brother Muff here, who's had the most victories, you have to show you can be an asset in oppression, no matter what your circumstance. You have to demonstrate that you can be an asset no matter what. So I just wanted to kind of share that. Yeah, I get stirred up with this, and I get a little loud with it. That's just me. I come out of that era. I look back at brothers, I'm going to tell you, brothers like Raymond Clay, Brother Ron Benson, those were 2 of the major advocates when we got there. 2 of the major Black students who had the nerve to stand up to the administration. We had no cultural centers. We had no multicultural offices. We had, my second year, we had Dr. Wade, who worked for the military, and he was there. But other than that, like you said, Dr. Ferris, no Black teachers, even with what was going on. So again, this is why I get a little stirred up. I love the fact I saw them. I saw the most beautiful Black women Tia had ever seen in my life. I'm coming from the country. I'd never seen that much beauty in one place. Sisters was fine. Sisters was bad, And so the reality, like I said, I'm just a nerd on campus. So I'm trying to check everybody out. But the students used to go downtown and get locked in. That was the other thing. We had to deal with the fact that our Black community in Richmond, the reality of what was happening, some of them were jealous that we were on campus. We were the new folk on campus. We were the new people in town. And that was, Brother Moore, a problem. So I just want to share that, just some of the experiences. But I did have some good experiences.
And I'm sorry I'm having technical issues, but I'm going to try to get to the next question, because I really think the conversation is really queuing us up. And I think we've all been able to watch, the social justice movements over the past few years, over the past few months. But what I would like to hear is maybe if some of the panelists can talk about how you've been involved in civil rights movement, maybe current social justice movements or past civil rights movements.
One of the things that, as Dr. Abercrombie was saying, oftentimes when you're from a small town, you don't have a lot of professional individuals in your city. So, you look to Lexington, which was 20 minutes from Winchester, Kentucky, or you look to Frankfort because that's where the HBCU was in Kentucky. And you knew there was a lot of professional PhD individuals in Frankfort. So as an individual growing up in Winchester, oftentimes when you had a college degree, in a small town, people would expect to push you out there to be more involved in the community than you would maybe want to be at that time. So, of course, when I graduated from EKU and went back home to Winchester to start my teaching career, I had the opportunity to serve as the president of the NAACP, which during that time, young people, most cities had local NAACPs that were very, very active. Of course, I don't know what your thoughts are about that organization at this time, but many cities at that time had very active NAACPs because at that time, Dr. Abercrombie, there was still a lot of discrimination, housing, racial. And so that was the place that individuals would come because we still had that national affiliation where we could get representation, legal representation for those who were being discriminated against. So I served as the local NAACP president. And I tell this story because it was so interesting that I shared this with some individuals from Winchester several weeks ago. I was there visiting a friend who had surgery. And it was so interesting that I had gotten mail from the Ku Klux Klan at my address at home because I was the president of the NAACP. And of course, my husband, I was married at the time, my husband said, you need to, say something about that. So of course I go to the post office and they did absolutely nothing about it. But at that time, somebody had to stand up. But so I take that experience and really enjoyed being the president, had an opportunity to do a lot of national conventions. And so that was one of the things that we were always brought up in my families, that you give back. And however that might be, community service, you help other people or however. But since I have, and I know many people who know Elaine Ferris, I have always been an advocate, not only for other people, but also an advocate for myself. And I never have been afraid to speak up when there has been injustice. As being the first Black administrator in Winchester at the high school, I was the first African-American principal that they had. I was given the label of, they call me Martin Luther King, because when I saw practices that were not equal or they were not fair to Black students, I would challenge it with the administration. So those are the kinds of things that I always took part in. And here in Shelby County, my husband and I decided we're a part of the NAACP here, and we are co-chairs of the Political Action Committee, and we have spent probably the last 4 months getting the vote out. And so those are the kinds of things that I think if you don't go to Louisville and protest, if you don't do some of the other kinds of things, marches and that there are many, many things that you can do in your community that will still help bring about social justice. But the biggest thing I think we can do is that we just have to stand up for what's right. Even when other people are silent, you have to use your voice. You have more influence than you think. People listen, even when you think they're not listening. And so even in your seat that you sit in, you have to stand up for what's wrong. You have to say what's wrong and stand up for what's right. One of my favorite quotes is what, Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring a folding chair. And I tell people all the time, if you don't have to invite me to the table, if I think I need to be there, I'm going to invite myself. Your job is you, and I challenge you to tell me I need to leave. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes we just have to push in. And I don't have a problem pushing in, especially when I know it's going to help other people. Because see, I'm old enough and crazy enough now that it ain't for me, but EUL is for you. So I'm still going to speak up. I'm still going to push in, and I'm going to say everything I need to say. Because see, I don't work for nobody no more. So I don't have a problem saying what I need to say if it's going to help somebody else. So I just think there's other things we can do when we talk about this social justice. We got to challenge people's practices. We got to challenge policies. You know, oftentimes we think that it's about what we need to do. Any agency we go in, any place we work, the first thing I challenge young people to do is look at the policies and the practices. 9 out of 10 times, there are going to be policies in place that's not good for you. And then if people say that they want to do something and they believe in social justice and they believe in this, then watch their practices and review their policies. If they're serious about it, they change their policies and they change their practices.
So I think both of you have set up some important things to talk about too, and we've heard several names mentioned about finding support, and for some generations may have been an unlikely place. Who was it or what was it that pushed you through to the success all of you all achieved? Where did you find your support, your solace, your people on campus to continue lifting you up and pushing you through? For any of our panelists, even our young alums, where did that come for you? Devin talked about his teammates. Anyone else, tell us about what it was that kept you going. You all made it through. You graduated. You got that degree. Who helped push you or even pull you to that destination?
I'll go first on this one. I would say that first, my faith pushes me through a lot of hard times. So that's what is the main the fuel in my engine that keeps me going. But then there were people that there's two people that come to mind is Dr. Palka when I was on campus. He worked with student athletes when I was there, and he came from the Midwest area, and he talked to me about college education. Parents always talked to me about college education, but it was one of those things when I got there, it was like, wow, this is really overwhelming. And he kind of walked me through those steps, step by step, to graduate. So I'm forever indebted to him. And then finally, Dr. Aaron Thompson, he's the president of post-secondary education right now. He's a man that I met very early on into my college career, and him being the first Black man to do a lot of different things in this state, he keeps inspiring me and keeps pushing me to keep going forward. And I think it's really important to have like a mentor in that aspect, to someone that can challenge you and push you to that next level where you didn't think that you could go. And so that's the role that he really plays in my life, even to this day. Every day I still hear he's on my dissertation committee, so he's still pushing me.
And Tia, I know you've been involved, as several of our members have, with Black Greek organizations. What is having that sisterhood like? I couldn't help, if we were in person, I know as we went through each of the introductions, we would have heard the calls of the sororities and fraternities. Like I just heard them in my head when we say Delta Sigma Theta and all the different groups. What did that help push you through? What did it mean finding that sisterhood within Black Greek life?
Definitely. I think Delta helped me find that culture that I needed at Eastern. We were a very small chapter because you have to think about it. You already have a small Black community. And then you take those Black females who want to be Greek versus those who don't want to be Greek. Then you take the ones that want to be Greek and then you divide them up between the 3 sororities. So it was always a small number, especially for our chapter. But in Delta, we always came together. We always found each other. We would always, and let me actually say, Brandy Johnson, she was very supportive during that time. I was the president of Delta while I was there. And anything that we needed, we could always go to her, and she would definitely help and support us. So I definitely want to shout her out, because there were some things that I don't feel like we would have or could have done without her. But also during that time when we were struggling to get things done, through me being an RA and being able to collaborate with some of the other white Greek organizations, we were able to do more things on campus as well. And I'll give you an example. It was always a stigma that whenever a Black Greek organization had a party on campus, there was going to be a fight or some kind of issue, and public safety would always either be too busy or they never had enough people to where we could ever have an event. So one time I did get with Kyle Mavis. I was actually the RA at the time in McGregor Hall, and they happily helped us. They were able to get the security that we needed for the party. They had actually booked security. They didn't have any issues. We had the party. We did not have the turnout that we would have liked. But that was one instance where we were able to collaborate to get some things done that we need to get done at the time. But sisterhood was huge. And I would also like to say, during this time of homecoming, my chapter Ada Row would be celebrating our 50th year this year. So shout out to Ada Row and Delta Sigma Theta.
Well, it's interesting when you ask the question about what pulls you through. Several things for me. One of the things I want to say, Dr. Ferris, that I think all of you all will probably agree with. Our generation were very churchy and very religious, even though we weren't perfect. So that's why the university ensemble was able to do what it was able to do, because people could raise hell, party, do anything they want to do. But on Sunday, when them buses rolled, you had some of everyone. And when I kind of think back, it's a great question when you ask what pulled us through. The first thing that really helped pull us through, not naming people, I think of Black student organizations. Certainly I have to look at my brothers at Omega Psi Phi fraternity. We were the first Black Greek letter organization. The term we pledged for a year and a half. But when you look at the brothers who were there then and look at what they've accomplished now, you can see that, my brothers were really about something. They were good people, not perfect, but good people. I'm thinking about the Black Student Union started when I was there. I can remember a meeting down in the Ravine. We haven't mentioned the Ravine yet. The Ravine really was our outside cultural center. But we had a meeting, and it was the first time I'd ever seen so many Black students, because everybody didn't come to the dances. Everybody didn't come to the sporting events, but we were planning for homecoming. So people, bottom line, met in the Ravine. Oh, wow. I will never forget that meeting. And then when we talk about people, I'm clear that if it had not been for Dr. William and Marion Burge, I would not have been able to have accomplished the things I've accomplished, because they made my way out of no way. Here I am. And Sister Tia, I was married to one of those fine sisters from Delta Sigma Theta.
That's right.
The reality is we had a son, and the Burges were his godparents. And so the reality of, to be honest, later on in life, when I told y'all how I really never looked back at Eastern because of the scarring, when I started to think about it, I was like, why would I not uphold? Why would I not connect? Why would I not honor the people who've helped me make it to where I am? So if it hadn't been for the Burges, definitely not. And so my wife and I now, we have established a scholarship in their honor. 2 students a year receive a scholarship. And then there's other names, Mr. Vesio. But here's what I want to end with. Out of something bad comes something good. I still have to acknowledge Dr. Martin. I mean, I'm going to say it this way. I thought he was the Donald Trump of 1966 on that campus. That's the way it was. But it's interesting. He was the one who gave me the opportunity to move on and get the formal education that I needed to be able to do what I need to do. If we talk about social activism, it began at Eastern Kentucky University in terms of, you know, from the time I hit Covington, I always raise hell. And I still do as much as I can. So I march, I protest, I'm part of NAACP, I'm part of the National Action Network. My whole thing is I'm gonna do what I do until I go out on empty. And a lot of that came from my experience at Eastern Kentucky University. So when I look at that, when I look at the people who helped me endure what I was having to endure in other students, I was like, how can I turn my back on that? Let me go back to the place where this started and do what I can do. And that's how I turned around. That's how I mentally turned around, because up to this point, I'm a Bearcat. When I left Eastern, 46 years and 8 months, that was my life. And you all know, in being in college environment, there's no more systematic oppression that occurs than on college campuses. And you need people who can speak up, who will deal with things as they are, you know. So that's kind of my journey, my story of how who helped me.
And I think that really leads into this next question, and then we want to make sure we have some time to get some audience questions. And I'm going to start with maybe EUL. So maybe could you talk to us about, and I think Dr. Abercrombie did a good job, and Dr. Ferris did a good job of talking about advocacy. What does advocacy mean to you?
That's an interesting question. In the sense that, is it advocacy that I am advocating for, or what does advocacy look like from other people? I think in both ways, if I look at me advocating for other students, there is never a time where I will not have something. If I don't have a platform, I still have my voice. If I don't have my voice, I still have a pen and a pad. And if I don't have a pen and a pad, then I have my phone, and I have Twitter, and social media. And so what advocacy, for how I see it in the way that I advocate for my peers or anyone in general, is what I have, I only have because it was given to me. And it was given to me so I can dispense it as freely as it was given to me. But if I'm looking at how can people advocate for the Black community, first thing is vote. I mean, quite honestly, to quote Barack Obama, don't boo, vote. It's right there. And the other thing I will say is, I'm not going to try to bring this out of memory too much, because I'm for sure, I don't know if I'll, but Dr. Martin Luther King's The Two Americas speech that he gave, and him talking about it cost the nation roughly nothing to integrate lunch counters and hotels and motels. But he talks about it's going to cost the nation billions of dollars to get rid of poverty and the slums, and to make sure, and talking about higher education, quality integrated education a reality. And so if we talk about advocacy, where's the money at? Where are you spending it? or like who has it? And so it's I know I'm talking about very not in specifics and very broad aspects, but where's the vote and where's the money? That's what advocacy is to me.
I would agree. I would definitely say, if I'm just throwing out words, I'm going to say support. I'm going to say help. I'm going to say speaking up. I'm going to say equality, but definitely pushing the agenda forward. But it has to come through physical, and it has to come monetarily as well.
I think Albert's add on to that is looking out for the best interests of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. So on a college campus, what that means is, at Eastern Kentucky, there's Black students and that come from, that may be first generation students that may come from low income areas, and then there's Appalachian students that may come from low income areas. And so what kind of tools can we provide, not for just equality, but for equity, so that we can reach equality. And so that when we reach that equitable status there, that's when we can start talking about justice and whatnot. But right now, we just got to give the people the tools to reach to that level. Because our marginalized communities are still being pushed to the fringes, simply because it's a burden for those who have. So looking out for the best interests of those who don't have.
You know, I was really honored to serve as the national president for a Black professional organization, the John D. O'Brien National Think Tank for Black Professionals in Higher Education. So I know as administrators, Sister Middleton and Brother Moore, you know, this was our motto. If you're not here to serve the students, you're in the wrong place. And I think that's what's important about advocacy. You got to have more people at Eastern who are in the right place. And if they're not in the right place, you got to call them out, or you got to go and ask for help. Your administrators should be the experts on trying to assist you in terms of having people who advocate for what students want. But Brother Ewell, students have to be about it, have to be serious, have to be on the case, have to be progressive, have to be dependable, have to be about accomplishing in the classroom. That's why people are there. So when I think about this whole advocacy piece, it's really, if we're professionals, especially working on these campuses, that ought to be one of our major roles. And like I say, if we're not doing it, we ought to be called out.
And I'd just like to add, before we go into the other questions, is that I see advocacy too as, say, for instance, as I said earlier, I'm retired, but my 32 years in public education and spending all my 65 years here in Kentucky, and I've been a lot of places, met a lot of people. So my roots are deep and wide. So I can advocate for a lot of people in a lot of areas. But how I do that is people will say, well, have you talked to Elaine Ferris? Or have you talked to Dr. Ferris? I may not have the answer for you, but I guarantee you I know somebody who does have the answer. So to me I have to be a voice or an influencer that provides access and opportunity to those individuals who may not have it at this time. So that's how I look at advocacy, is opening the doors for access and opportunity for those who may not know how. That's what my consulting firm does. I open up doors for people who may not know how to open that door. And once the door is open, how can I support that person to go where they need to go once they get in the door? So to me, that's advocacy. And it has nothing to do with gender or color or whatever. If it's something that I can help you do to get you where you need to go, most people have my cell phone number, my email address. People call me, I don't even know. So-and-so told me to call you. And so that's advocacy to me.
Well, I think you all have brought up some wonderful points. And as we look forward, some of you've touched on it already, and I'm going to try to summarize several of the questions. We're getting lots of great questions. We promise we'll let everybody get out of here at bedtime, so we're going to have to try to wind down here in the next 15, 20 minutes or so. But one of the email submitted questions was about what should be a priority for us moving forward and making sure our students have the support that they needed and are focused on these issues. Some of the chat questions are about what should be in our 5-year plan. How can people be allies? What role does that play? So if each of you could take a moment and think and share with the group, we would love to hear each of your perspectives. What are the priorities that you think will help move us forward and move the needle in all these areas that we discussed as we think of the students that will come after EUL? The students, our classes of 2030, and by the time my kids are in college and hopefully colonels, what priorities do we set to make it better for the next generation?
Well, one thing that has come out of the Black Lives Matter movement is the whole issue of we don't, like when I came to Eastern, we don't have to question whether or not racism exists anymore. When I came, the word that was bad was to call somebody prejudiced. Nobody spoke racism. So I think one of the things that can happen, Dr. Moore, to move things forward is the reality of dealing with what is the definition of institutionalized racism. And once you determine what that is, who does it impact and how do you go about getting rid of it? Another thing is we need resources. We need resources that are earmarked specifically toward issues of areas of identity, what people call identity areas. You know, people of color, multicultural centers, which you have, gender, LGBTQ. The reality is we're in danger of not being able to have any of that when we know it's helped us be progressive. So we need resources. And then the third thing I'll say is we need the alumni to be reached out to and to become involved in what way might be possible. So just like tonight, being on this call, you know, I mean, it's so creative because just think, this is a way that without anybody even leaving their home, they can sit and talk to 5 or 6 students who might have questions. So those are 3 things right now for me: dealing with institutionalized oppression, dealing with having more resources, not pulling them back, and dealing with more people getting involved in trying to help the university accomplish the goal. See, when I was in school, there was no word called diversity. In fact, people tried to make diversity not happen. Diversity is a new word. It's not one when I came. So let me say this: diversity is important. We should make it important, keep it important. So those are some of the things that I would suggest.
And I think we have to start with leadership. You know, oftentimes we talk about institutional racism, and we use all the right buzzwords, and we want to put a committee together to talk about racism, a committee together to talk about diversity and inclusion and all those things. And how often I have said to people, don't put me on not one other committee about closing the achievement gap, because you ain't done it yet. So I feel the same way about this issue, but I think we have to start with leadership. It has to be diverse. And not only does it have to be diverse, but it's a heart issue to me. It's a heart issue. You can't make people, just because they've gone through some training, to believe that all people are created equal. I think you got to start with policies and practices. And when you do that, I think you got to hold each other accountable. You can't have those segregated conversations before the meeting and then come to the diverse meeting and talk another way. And I think that's what's going on in most of our agencies. I think people want to do the right thing, but it's hard work doing the right thing. And so people are not, they don't want to do the hard work, because then you have to probably make someone uncomfortable. And I've said it time and time again, nothing's going to change when we talk about institutional racism policies and practices until everybody is uncomfortable. We're okay talking about poor children and poor people, but we get very uncomfortable when we start talking about Black people and minorities. And until we can break down that barrier of uncomfortableness and bring it to the table, and people stop saying, every time we have a meeting, you got to talk about this. Yes, every time we have a meeting, we're going to talk about this. Because we have to, if we're going to make things better for UEL and the generations to come. And it's going to start with leadership. It's going to start with leadership. Dr. McFadden has an opportunity to do something great at EKU. Thank you, Dr. Moore, for being there. But I'm telling you right now, meetings and committees is not going to get it. Policies have got to change. Practices have got to change. Conversations have got to change. And everything on EKU's campus has got to be through the lens of diversity. Everything. Don't bring me a magazine and everybody on the magazine is white. But you're talking about diversity and inclusion.
And you're right, Dr. Ferris, because even in 2020, we need to break the polite silence. People really still, even at the top administrative levels, are not really having the hard conversations. And I see that, Dr. Moore, as you and Christy's challenge is helping to urge people. You can set the stage. You're not the one that can serve the meal. You can set, you decide on the meal, but you can set the stage. And so I agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly, Dr. Ferris, as we talk about the things that we need to do. But the other thing we need to do, we need to show our students that even through struggle, they can have fun. See, my problem is I might seem a little grumpy and this, that, and the other. I wasn't able to enjoy my college experience. So Sister Tia, I'm elated that you were able to say you do, Brother Muff, you were able to say that you were able to enjoy your college experience. I'm not sure that Black college students and other students of color and other identity groups are able to say that, because it's interesting, Brother Ewell, your conversations seem to be a little low key in terms of what your experiences have been, in terms of what you're dealing with now, and really kind of like what the environment is like. So I'm not sure, like from 2020 back to 1966, I'm not sure, Dr. Ferris, that we're at the same point. I'm not sure in terms of how Black students feel. I come to Eastern, one of the first things I do is if I see a student, I'm gonna stop you and say, how you doing? And ask you, how do you like it? Right? That's what I'm gonna do. And if we get the answers that I'm here, but I really don't like it, that's something we need to work on right there.
And that speaks to another topic that's come up in the comments about retention. From our younger alums, what do you think is it that we can do more of or are needing to do to help keep our students on track to finish our underrepresented populations in terms of retention and having that good experience that Dr. Abercrombie mentioned, so they don't just survive here but will thrive here? What are your thoughts and advice on giving students the support that they need to improve retention and make sure that stays a focus?
Well, first is to break down barriers to help our Black and Hispanic students be more successful. But also, I'll say that having more diverse faculty and staff, not just working in diversity, that we're more valuable than just one department. And so, and giving us, because just to be honest, the Black tax is real. Dr. Moore, you're just one person. You can't have all the Black kids go into school, go to one person. You're going to get worn out. And so having other people, other resources that we can go to, that would help. Because just having people come from different experiences and just giving us different mentors. I think that would be huge, and someone that you can just conversate and relate to, because like I said, at the end of the day, our people working in our diversity offices are just one person.
And I think you got to look at your data. You know what when you look at your African American and brown students who come to EKU, but they do not matriculate through to graduation. What is it? I mean, and then you use that information. Do you need to put mentoring programs in place? Is it English? Is it the math that is the stumbling block? Because usually there are some gateway classes that are the stumbling block for students to get to the other side of that junior year, that sophomore year. And so I think that mentoring programs are very, very important. I know it was for me to see people who look like me, who encouraged me, who checked on me on a regular basis. And I don't know what type of programs you all have there, but I think that would be very, very important. And you don't have that many African American students, minority students there, that it's very doable. But I think some of it is you just have to have someone who's going to check on those students and say, okay, is it an academic issue? You know, kids drop out of school for a lot of reasons, not just academics. It could be financial, it could be mental. So I think those are the kinds of things we have to look at, and maybe even those students who didn't come back and find out why is that the case? Because you know there's a lot of reasons why, but I think as small as EKU's minority population is, that some strong mentoring programs would really be helpful.
I want to see things expanded. I hope under Dr. Moore, I want to see you get the support that you need to accomplish the things that I know you are. I want to see, I don't know if you have, I think it's multicultural office. I want more resources to be put in that office, because those are the people on the front line who are student advocates. And I know what it's like to be a student affairs worker. So I would hope that what Eastern would do is practice what it preaches. Just be honest about, is this really the place to be? Don't put all that literature out about what you have to offer, and then it's not there. And then another thing we got to deal with is, if we don't have enough people who look like us, then we got to make sure the people who got to work with our young people who don't have the experience get the education and the training to do so. So those would be some of the things, you know, I would really suggest.
And I know when I was at EKU working on my doctorate, Devian, we had probably at least 8 African American professors in that doctoral educational program. And my understanding now is most of those individuals are gone. And I don't know what happened, but to me, that's an issue. So I don't know where recruiting of minority professors, and I don't know what that looks like. But and the other thing I would ask you, Dr. Moore, is your office, do you think that you have been adequately funded to do the things that you need to do? Because we know people put their money where places that it's important to them. And so that would be something I would ask, you know, if the equity and diversity office is important to the institution, then have they given you the resources that you need to be successful? I mean, that's what I look at. If you're serious about it, then give me some money.
Okay, and I'm going to answer that one. And you know, I've been having major technical difficulties, so I may cut out. But I will say, resources and support have been given for me to somewhat build a division that really supports our students. So I do, and Dr. Abercrombie and I actually had a conversation earlier I think last week. I've been given the resources and support. I think we just really need to, and I think we talked about really connecting with alumni to start, you know, this idea of mentorship is important. But I do think, you know, in my 3 months, you know, I can't probably, I will say I don't think I've heard no, you know, yet. You know, it's about being creative, but you know, I don't think I've heard the word no yet. So you know, I'm going to continue to advocate for our students. But I do want to ask one last question before we wrap up, while my technology is actually working. if maybe in one sentence, if everyone could maybe, share, one signature experience or memory of their time at EKU. As we talk about, the times that we had, and we've kind of joked in the pre of our conversation. If you could just share a memory or an experience that, there's a lot of current students listening to this Zoom. So a current experience or memory from your time at EKU. We'll let EUL go first since his time is most recent.
I want to put this as a tentative because I hope that I'll form more experiences that will be signature to this. So I don't want to put a lid on my experience bottle, but I will say fairly recently there was a Black Lives Matter march on campus, and everyone got together right outside of King Johnson. And I saw some of the kids, like some of the students that I was in bio lab with and that I had classes with and that I'd seen in the dining hall. And, like just people that I knew speak and pour their heart out. And we marched across campus. And the way that the solidarity and the unity that we had in that moment, I knew probably 7 people there, but it really felt like I actually knew all 200 or however many people were there. So I would say that's one of the signature experiences.
I have to say that probably was Saturday afternoons. All the African American students would get together and we go to the football games. Easton had those great football games, football teams back then, and those were special weekends because we all knew where we were going to meet. We all knew we were going to sit, and those were just great memories for me. Was going to the football games with my classmates, and just exciting time at EKU. We had great football teams then, and it was exciting and loved it.
Signature memory, I mean a memory and experience, but one that I kind of felt like brought unity was 9/11. That was kind of defining time during my college time, and it was just a moment where even though it didn't have anything to do with race or anything, but you felt the unity of the campus during that time. So that is a memory that I remember at being EKU. But the experience of being in the greatest sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, just always having time with my sorority sisters, cooking, eating, stepping, everything, the whole experience really made my EKU experience the best.
Well, this is the easiest question I got all night. First off, I want to say thank you all for having me on this panel. I really enjoyed it. You guys are great. But my signature experience was the NCAA tournament. You all know that. When we got to go to the NCAA tournament, there's a picture right behind me. You see me celebrate. It's a moment I'll remember forever. Some of those guys were in my wedding last year. And so, the NCAA tournament by far was the time where all of Richmond can come together and it was like treat like a rock star for a couple months in town. So I loved it.
I want to say this quickly. This week, I think his funeral may have been today, a brother, Willie Woods, who played on the basketball team. You're right. At Eastern, sports was very important. The football and the basketball games, even with the Confederate flags over your head and people calling your names, you still enjoy, the sporting events, but we lost that dear brother. And then I also want to say that, I when I think about, and I want to leave with this being my most memorable moment, I want to go back to the ravine. And I want to go back to the one time, and I'm sure there was more in my time at Eastern, when you could look around and see all Black students who, Tia, represented. You're right. There's a good, bad, and ugly. It wasn't always good. We weren't always good to each other, right? So when I look there, and you know, a group that I want to mention, because I think I've mentioned all the groups, but Kappa Alpha Psi, who was there when I was there. But I also want to I want to mention the 7-Elevens. You know, back in the day on college campuses, we had what was called the GDIs. These were the people who, bottom line, you know, were not in Greek letter organizations. We always had a rivalry. That's the point I want to make. But from the athletes to 7-Eleven to my fraternity, who's also celebrating our 50 year, you know, when I think back at that moment, when all of us could really come together and really try to work on one goal, that really makes me feel good. That makes me smile. That, you know, that kind of takes that pain away that I began talking about. I want to thank you for, you know, in inviting me. There are a number of people who you could have invited to be on this panel, but I really have enjoyed meeting everyone. Please feel you can, you know, reach out to me anytime. So God bless everybody.
Well, I can think of no better way to end this conversation. We are forever indebted to our esteemed panelists. We knew this would be an interesting conversation, but wow, you all have truly taken us on a journey this last 90 minutes through the history of EKU, through the history of civil rights, and it has been a fun ride to take with you. To our panelists, we ask that you all will stay online just a little bit. We're going to have a backstage debrief if you all can stay on our technology here. To all of you who are watching and joining this conversation, we had so many more questions and topics we could cover, but the conversation was rich. So we wanted to let this breathe and keep it going. And we do want to say another special thank you to our partners at the library. Some of the archive images that you have seen, they have done a lot of work to organize the history of EKU and various moments that address racism and fights for civil rights. And they have some great guides and resources that are available. So please visit their Postcards to hashtag series. You'll find that link on the library's website, and they have more resources and more on this series of events. So there will be more conversations like this. To my colleague, Dr. Moore, thank you for joining us. I know you've had to pop in and out, but continue this conversation. And thank you all, each of you, for representing EKU so well. We are proud, so proud to say that you are part of our EKU family and you are representing our maroon very well this evening.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great night. Thank you for being with us.
Don't forget get out and vote. Vote, vote, vote.